History, the Brazilian Grand Prix moved from Interlagos to the tough and demanding 3.1-mile circuit at the Rio Autodrome. Tough and demanding because it's bumpy, because it embraces a sinuous 11-corner section, and because the main straight is nearly 3/4 of a mile long. So it's a real test for the cars and a real test for the drivers, because although it's wet, it's really hot and humid at Rio. After Alan Jones's superb victory at Long Beach, the reigning world champion's leading this year's contest ahead of his teammate Carlos Reutemann. And Long Beach was the third consecutive first and second places for the same two drivers in the Williams team, an all-time Grand Prix record. Well, it's harmonious enough on the driver front, but there's not much brotherly love amongst the constructors. For again, the contentious Lotus 88's been protested and excluded for allegedly breaking the painfully evolved new car design rules. And in spite of all the talk about the imminent dominance of turbocharged cars, it hasn't happened yet. For once again, the astounding Ford Cosworth V8 engine is powering most of the practice leaderboard cars. For in pole position, it's Nelson Piquet, the new hero of Brazil, 8 seconds inside Carlos Reutemann's 1978 Ferrari lap record. Then in his Saudi Leyland Williams on the right, it's Reutemann himself, 3 times winner at Brazil. World champion Alan Jones on the left is third fastest. 23 starters, 63 laps, and that's 197 miles. And watch for the red light, and then shortly after it the green, and it will be go for the 63-lap Brazilian Grand Prix. And it's a superb start for Carlos Reutemann and for Riccardo Patrese and Alan Jones, and they've all got ahead of the pole place man Nelson Piquet, who is in 4th position, number 5, as they go into the first corner, the swinging right-hander, and this is an anti-clockwise course, and it's Reutemann leading Patrese, and number 21 Chico Serra, the Brazilian, has already spun out of the race, and now they'll have to get his car off the circuit. Reutemann leading on lap 1. The Argentine driver in his 131st Grand Prix, and look again at the start. A superb start by Reutemann. Patrese coming up on the right, Jones on the left, and Piquet drops back, and there is the Alfa Romeo in the background as we rejoin the race to see Reutemann leading Patrese, and Alan Jones has closed right up on the Italian, and it was Riccardo Patrese, don't forget, who led at Long Beach, the last Grand Prix, until about 30 laps into it, when his engine had trouble with the fuel feed and he had to drop out of the race. So, Reutemann in the Saudi Leyland Williams car, leading Patrese in the orange and white arrows, followed immediately by Alan Jones, the reigning world champion, in the white Saudi Leyland team car with his teammate Carlos Reutemann accelerating away. And you can see how bad the conditions are here at Rio, because the great rooster tails of spray coming up from the big rear tires of the cars. Alan Jones moves out to his left to avoid that spray and get a clear view of the circuit, and Alan Jones is through ahead of Patrese. Alan Jones is up into second place, so again, and we've seen it so many times recently in Grand Prix, it is the Williams cars first and second. There's Jones second ahead of Riccardo Patrese. As ever, an enormous crowd, and that is Patrick Tambay, the Frenchman who finished in 6th place at Long Beach in the new Theodore car, backed by Teddy Yip. He's spun off, but he's driving back onto the circuit as we rejoin, and we see again this oh so familiar sight. Reutemann, Jones, and behind them in 3rd position, Riccardo Patrese, and these 3 are already, even in this early stage of the race, pulling away from the battle behind them for 4th position. And as I talk to you, it's Elio De Angelis, the Lotus team driver, who is in 4th position, with Bruno Giacomelli in the Alfa Romeo in 5th position, ahead of Keke Rosberg. And there are the first 5 or 6 cars coming down the straight. Reutemann moves across to his right to get the racing line, and that's Eddie Cheever in the Tyrrell, who has stalled on the circuit. It'll be interesting to see whether he gets going again. Very demanding circuit this, like most of the Grand Prix circuits. This one, though, is bumpy. It hasn't been used since 1978 because the Brazilian Grand Prix was held at Interlagos, which is near Sao Paulo, the home of the 1972 and 74 world champion Emerson Fittipaldi, whose place as the hero of Brazil has been taken in this race by Nelson Piquet and Chico Serra. Nelson Piquet's countryman and Fittipaldi's countryman started the race and is already out of it, as you saw earlier on. So Reutemann from another South American country, the Argentine, leads. Jones second, Patrese third, and it would seem, and it's always dangerous to make a prophecy in car racing, and certainly in a Grand Prix as early as this, but it would seem that already the two Williams cars are stamping their dominance on the Brazilian Grand Prix. They have already recently broken a Grand Prix, an all-time World Championship motor racing record, because these same two drivers have finished first and second in the last three Grand Prix. The last three World Championship point-scoring Grand Prix, because Alan Jones won at Long Beach with Reutemann second. Reutemann won in South Africa this year, but it didn't count for World Championship points. Alan Jones won at Watkins Glen in 1980, the last race of the year, and 21 there is Chico Serra's car. And as I prophesied, it's been manhandled off the course. And I was saying that Reutemann had finished in second place to Jones at Watkins Glen, as he did at Canada last year, and that's a record. The same two drivers, first and second in three successive World Championship point-scoring Grand Prix, an incredible record. Not just a testimony to the drivers, but to the incredible reliability of their cars. Reutemann leads. Jones second. Look for the flash of the orange car. There it is. Riccardo Patrese in third position. And those three a long, long way ahead of Lotus team leader, young Elio De Angelis, just 22 years old. And we'll be seeing him later. There's De Angelis. You just saw him approaching the corner as Reutemann and Jones accelerated out down the straight into the right-hander again. And now it's just a case for Reutemann of keeping up his rhythm. This tremendously experienced 38-year-old Argentine driver. Indeed, next to Mario Andretti, the American, Reutemann is the oldest driver in this race, with a quite incredible record here at Brazil. Because Carlos won in 1972. It was not actually a World Championship point-scoring race then, but he won in 1977, and then he won again in 1978 here at Rio, and then he was in the Ferrari team. He left Ferrari and went to Lotus. Then last year he left Lotus and went to Williams, and now for the fourth time he's leading the Brazilian Grand Prix and looking well on it. And who's that? That is Villeneuve. That's Gilles Villeneuve doing in the Brazilian Grand Prix what you will recall Jacques Laffite, the Frenchman, did just a couple of weeks ago or so at Long Beach, crumpling up the front of his car, and with 5 laps completed out of 63, there is the race order, indicating that Bruno Giacomelli is in 5th place in the Alfa Romeo, and Keke Rosberg, the Finnish driver, in 6th position in the Fittipaldi car. And Villeneuve now into the pits, obviously to have a new nose section fitted, because there's no reason why the car should not be a good runner once a new section's been put on the nose. But he will be well adrift. He will have lost a good lap and be right down the order. Whereas as Jones and Reutemann ahead of him go past Serra's car, parked by the side of the road, they are very, very much in command. And there's either Guerra, the South American driver in the Osella, or one of the Ferraris ahead of Reutemann. And from the look of it, it's an Osella. Just caught a flash of the maroon car as Reutemann and Jones driving round implacably in team order. But there's an interesting sidelight on what we're looking at now. Carlos Reutemann, notwithstanding his enormous experience and the fact that he has won, yes, it's an Osella that they're passing, it's Angel Guerra, notwithstanding the fact that Reutemann, with all his experience and 11 Grand Prix victories behind him, as has his teammate Alan Jones, is actually the number 2 driver and the number 2 contracted driver in the Williams team. And there is a clause in his contract which says if at the closing stages of a Grand Prix, and that's Hector Ribach, the Mexican driver in the Parmalat Brabham car with the Ford Cosworth V8 engine, presumably coming in to change tyres, as coming towards us now goes Ricardo Zunino, the Argentine driver, who is being closed up on by another Argentine driver, and this time it's the man who's leading the race, Carlos Reutemann. Reutemann passes, Jones comes out of the slipstream of Guerra as Reutemann gives the driver behind him a real faceful of spray and water, and Alan Jones closes up and goes past him too. So it's just a case now of the 2 Williams drivers maintaining their rhythm, and I was explaining that Carlos Reutemann has got a clause in his contract which says if at the closing stage of a Grand Prix he is less than 10 seconds ahead of Alan Jones, in other words, if Alan Jones is rather less than 10 seconds behind Reutemann, then Reutemann must move over and let Alan Jones through to win. 10 laps completed, Patrese still 3rd, De Angelis 4th, Rosberg in 5th position, and now John Watson in 6th place, and we're looking down now at John Watson as the picture changes, and Watson has got ahead of Rosberg. So there is the battle for 5th and 6th position. John Watson in 5th place now in the red and white Marlboro car, followed by, there goes Rosberg, and behind Rosberg it's one of the 2 Talbot Matra cars, the blue and white car, and it's probably Jacques Laffite ahead of his countryman Jean-Pierre Jarier, both of them in the Talbots with the V12 Matra engines, only their 2nd Grand Prix. Long Beach was the 1st. Watson, Rosberg, and it's Jean-Pierre Jarier behind him, and behind Jarier is Marc Surer. Marc Surer, the Swiss driver, the 3rd of these 3 cars as Watson comes towards us, then Rosberg. Behind Rosberg is Jarier, and behind Jarier there is Marc Surer. Now this is interesting. Marc Surer, the Formula 2 champion of Europe of 1979 in a March, went to the ATS Formula 1 team last year, crashed very badly at South Africa, broke both his legs, came back into racing at the tail end of last season in the ATS, and as Jarier, Jumper Jarier, the Frenchman, challenges and passes Keke Rosberg and moves up into 5th position in the process, Surer closes up on Rosberg. Now Surer has recovered from his leg injuries, joined the Ensign team. Now watch this replay as Jarier comes out of Rosberg's slipstream at just the right moment to tuck into the inside line. Rosberg has to move out and give way, closes in behind Jarier's rear aerofoil, and in the process has lost time and speed, which enables Marc Surer to close right up with him. But back at the front, or rather up at the front, Carlos Reutemann still leads. You'll notice he's got the rear light of his car on. All these Formula 1 Grand Prix drivers are obliged by the rules to have a rear light which can be switched on by the driver, and we're looking at Rosberg and Surer now. Surer right up with Rosberg. Rosberg has been passed, just if you remember, there's the Matt Talbot of Jarier. Now Surer, who's driving a terrific race, because the Ensign was certainly in last season not the fastest by a long chalk of the Formula One Grand Prix cars. Last year it was driven initially by Clay Regazzoni, who crashed so tragically at Long Beach, and then it was taken over by Jan Lammers, the Dutch driver. And now it's Mark Surer in the cockpit of the Ensign and really challenging Keke Rosberg and moving up into the World Championship scoring points position, because you get points for first, second, third, fourth, fifth and sixth places in the championship. Coming towards us, that's Pironi in the Ferrari, then Watson, then Jarier, and now Surer is challenging Rosberg. And he's going to go through, is he? That's where Jarier went through. No, Rosberg closes the door very firmly in the Swiss driver's face. That's number 14, Mark Surer, in the red, white and blue Ensign, very patriotically painted, because it's very much a British car. Whereas the Fittipaldi car in front of him, of course, is owned by Emerson Fittipaldi, and it's very much on its home circuit, although the car was built in Britain. So, Brazilian money behind this white car, built in Britain, driven by a Finnish driver. And there, Reutemann again, just to take us back to our yardstick, as it were, our locating point for the race, the man at the front, number 2, Carlos Reutemann. Man who's done just about everything. He's driven for Brabham, he's driven for Ferrari, he's driven for Lotus, he's driven for Williams. Third in the 1980 World Championship, Carlos Reutemann, and first at Monaco last year. Man with more experience in Grand Prix than anyone, including Mario Andretti, who is older than him. And Bruno Giacomelli, young Bruno Giacomelli, the Italian, comes into the pits in the V12 Alfa Romeo, out of the running now. Whatever the problem was, it's put him down the field, and he was, you will remember, in 5th place earlier on. About 8 laps into the race, he was in 5th position. Now Chiva's got going again. This blue car, number 4, as behind him, Elio De Angelis is moving up through the field. This is the young 22-year-old Italian driver in the Lotus 81. Not, I remind you, the Lotus 88, the extremely controversial twin chassis car, which for the second race in succession has been excluded. And now there is Elio De Angelis in the Lotus, punching his way past, going through, taking the corner line again, as Carlos Reutemann now comes through. Now it'll be interesting to see how far Alan Jones is behind him, because Alan, like Carlos Reutemann, and Alan is only in his 83rd Grand Prix, so he's a comparative newcomer in comparison with Carlos Reutemann. There is Jones, that's the gap. So Alan Jones is being very careful to keep well in sight of Carlos, far enough back to avoid that. That gives you a perfect indication of the relative positions of the two cars, and you will see that on the wet track Alan Jones is keeping well back out of Carlos Reutemann's spray, giving himself as clear a drive as he can, but yet staying well in touch with the race leader. So, some 40 minutes into this race, which will last, I would estimate, quickly working things out in my head, because they're doing very much slower lap times than they did in practice. And there is Pironi, followed by Rosberg, followed by Alain Prost, followed by Jarier. So things have really hotted up behind Carlos Reutemann, the leader. Alan Jones in 2nd place, Riccardo Patrese in 4th position, and Elio De Angelis, who is in 4th position behind Patrese, Jones and Reutemann. So there is Pironi, there is Prost, Alain Prost, the young Frenchman in the turbocharged 1.5 litre Renault, closing up on the turbocharged Ferrari of Didier Pironi, the Frenchman. and both of them now ahead of Keke Rosberg. Now the battle is going to be between Prost in the Turbo Renault and Pironi in the Turbo Ferrari. And this is only Pironi's second race in the Ferrari team. Pironi drove last year for the Ligier team, as it then was, and that was a replay, as you saw, of Prost passing Rosberg. Back again, Pironi in the Scarlet Ferrari, the V6 Turbo. And last year, at the end of the season, he announced that right at the beginning of 1980, to everybody's consternation, Pironi, the lead car here driver, had actually signed a Ferrari contract well at the beginning of the 1980 season, and so he has been in his third team now in just 3 years. Tyrrell, then Ligier, now Ferrari, and now Prost is going to take him. Prost is going to punch his way through, and he does it, and Pironi's lost it. Pironi's lost it and harpoons Prost. And there's a perfect indication of how effective the catch fencing is on today's Grand Prix circuits, because both drivers look to me, yes, they're both getting out of the cars, they're both perfectly all right, and it will be an extremely angry Prost. And here's a replay. Let's look at it again. Watch Pironi on the right. Prost is going through on his right, your left. Pironi loses it. The back swings out. He can't control it. Prost can't avoid him. The aerofoil of Pironi's Ferrari goes underneath Prost's car. They both spin off. The other drivers, including Keke Rosberg, keep going, of course, and they are spinning in unison across this very wet grass. Now into the catch fencing. Prost hits it first, then Pironi, rear end first. The catch fencing stops the cars very quickly indeed, and both drivers, I'm happy to tell you, are perfectly all right. And as I say, it will be an extremely angry Alain Prost, who is out of a Grand Prix, his second Grand Prix only in the Renault, for the second time, because he was punted off on the first lap, the very first corner at Long Beach, and now he's only just about 40 minutes or so into this race, which I estimate will last about 2 hours, before he's shoved off in the Brazilian Grand Prix here at Rio by Didier Pironi. And this is Carlos Reutemann leading. So the race order now, as we look at John Watson and behind him Jarier, they are battling for 5th position. Watson in the red and white Marlboro McLaren car, because this is the M29 McLaren, not the new M30. Watson then in 5th position. Jarier is Sura. There's Sura, the third of these 3 cars, in 7th position. Race order then. Carlos Reutemann, as you know, leads. Alan Jones, as you know. And as we look at Jarier challenging Watson, they're battling for 5th position. In 3rd place behind Alan Jones is Riccardo Patrese in the Arrows, still going well. We haven't seen much of him. In 4th position, Elio De Angelis in the Lotus. This is the battle for 5th. And behind Jarier, who is in 6th position, is Marc Sura, and we should see him in a moment. There's Sura, and in 8th position, Jacques Laffite, the second French driver in the Talbot Matra V12. But now, John Watson is under pressure from Jarier. John Watson, who lives at Bognor Regis in England, 109th Grand Prix this is. Chased by the experienced Frenchman Jarier, who has driven in the Shadow Formula One team, who has driven for ATS, who's driven for Lotus, who is challenging Watson, who holds him off. Very difficult to get past, of course. There's only one fastest line. And if you get off that fastest line, which has been cleared a bit by the tyres and made drier than the rest, and you take a chance on trying to get through, you could easily, if you get offline, hit a puddle, hit a patch of water and spin off before you know where you are. So Watson 5th, Jarier 6th, and behind them, but closing up, is Marc Sura in the Ensign in 6th position. 7th position, I'm sorry, Marc Sura is 7th. And that is number 30 is Sturr. It's Siegfried Sturr, the man with the German name who is in fact an Italian, the second of the two Arrows drivers. The first of the two Arrows drivers, of course, Riccardo Patrese, is in third position still. And Siegfried Sturr, his teammate, is out of contention here in Brazil, and he failed even to qualify at Long Beach, his first Grand Prix in America, before this race here at Brazil. And this is certainly not a day for Bruno Giacomelli, number 23, the 28-year-old ex-European Formula 2 champion in his third season of Formula 1 in the Alfa Romeo, but seemingly out of the race from the point of view of getting a place, because that's the second time we've seen Bruno Giacomelli, the young Italian, go into the pits in the Alfa Romeo. There's De Angelis, and behind De Angelis is Nelson Piquet, who started in pole position, who went down to fourth position. There is confirmation. Reutemann, Jones, Patrese, first, second and third. De Angelis, Watson and Jarier, fourth, fifth and sixth. There's the fifth place man, Watson, as into the pits again for the second time comes Hector Ribach, the Mexican. And we don't have time to see what the trouble is, because back again to see Watson and Surer. Surer has got ahead of Jarier. Marc Surer, that's Watson, and look at the next car. It's Marc Surer who has gone up a place. So Surer is now in sixth position, the second of these two cars. The blue and white cars behind him are in seventh and eighth places. Jarier, there's Jarier, and here is Watson, who is in fifth position. So Reutemann, Jones, Patrese, De Angelis in the Lotus, Watson that we are looking at, there he is, and behind him, closing up, is Surer. This is a magnificent race for Marc Surer. He's making his reputation here at Brazil today, and just watch the way he's harassing John Watson. Over half distance now, we're over an hour since the race started. And these cars, Watson, Surer, Jarier, Laffite. Jarier is closing up on Surer. Surer is closing up on Watson. Watson is in fifth position. And behind all of them, about 2 car lengths, Jacques Laffite in 8th position in the Talbot Matra. 5th, 6th, 7th. Now this is where Surer can challenge this point. He can get right up behind John Watson, tuck his front aerofoil under the rear wing of John Watson's car. John Watson will see the nose of Surer's ensign looming large in his left-hand mirror on the left-hand side of the windscreen. You just see it there. And you've got to have nerves of steel to resist the pressure and not make a mistake. And John Watson's holding him off superbly. Got an enormous amount of experience, of course, Watson. And he's been harassed. In fact, I remember a Grand Prix in 1976 when John Watson and James Hunt drove round for the whole area, even closer than Surer, the second of these 2 cars, and Watson are now. And Watson staved Hunt off and won the race by about a car's length, as close as they are now. So Watson's got a lot of experience of resisting pressure, and he's resisting it well now. And the 2 of them, Watson and Surer, are pulling away just a little from Jarier. And just imagine what it's like for Surer, because he's driving along virtually in a solid ball of spray that's coming up from Watson's wheels, and he challenges again. And now Jarier, because Watson went a little wide on the corner, as did Surer, Jarier was able to take a tighter line, and the 3 cars, 5th, 6th and 7th, are virtually together, and Jacques Laffite is starting to close up on Jarier. This is terrific stuff, and I remind you that ahead of them still is Carlos Reutemann, followed by Alan Jones, followed by Riccardo Patrese in 3rd place and Elio De Angelis in 4th place, and we look at the battle for 5th. And there's Jarier now taking the tight line, closing up on Sura, but Sura and Watson seem to be a bit better on acceleration, whereas Jarier closes up on braking. And now Sura is going to challenge again. John Watson, as far as one can see, quite implacable behind that rain-covered visor on the front of his helmet, which will be kept clear of spray to a great extent by the colossal wind pressure, which literally blows the water off the visor. You very seldom see a driver raise a gloved hand off the steering wheel to wipe his visor, because the wind pressure does it for him. And all round this course, this terrific crowd that's turned out in spite of the dreadful weather is witnessing a truly terrific scrap for this 5th place, which is more than you can say about 1st, 2nd, 3rd and 4th, because up in front it's pretty processional as Sura challenges again. And Jarier stays with Sura, and they spread out across the course, and that gives Laffite another chance to move up a bit. And the lap times are coming down. But in spite of this terrific scrap, these 4 are actually slowing each other down, because they are literally getting in each other's way, preventing any of them, even John Watson in front, from taking the ideal racing line. Watson will be intent on keeping the others back. The others will be intent on trying to out-fumble John, to make him brake late, to make him miss a change gear, to make him take a wrong line on a corner, anything to pressure the Englishman. And Sura challenges again. He's going to try and go through on the inside, but you have to jink right immediately after that corner, and he lost the advantage. Four cars absolutely together, the 2 V12 Matras in only their 2nd Grand Prix behind, and Watson slid out a bit there. That gave Sura a chance, and now Sura's going to try and go through on the inside again, but there's no way he's going to get past Watson unless Watson makes a mistake. Watson is now well in the rhythm of his racing. He knows the line exactly. He knows where Sura is going to challenge. So maybe Mark is trying to outfox Watson by showing him the nose of the ensign car at a certain place on appropriate corners, and he may then change his plan and try and nip through just where John isn't expecting him to. They are absolutely on the ragged edge of adhesion, of course, now. Wet road underneath them, a film of water underneath the tyres. It's very easy to lose the car. Watson in 5th place, Sura number 14 in 6th position, number 25 Jean-Pierre Jarier in 7th place, and number 26 Jacques Laffite, the 4th of the 4 cars that you'll see in your screen in a moment, is in 8th position. And they are closing up now on Eddie Cheever in the Tyrrell, and it may well be that there'd be a change. That's the position after 30 laps. That's just short of half distance. Watson and Sura, 5th and 6th, as I have been saying, closing up on Eddie Cheever, and it could well be that when they catch the young American driver, there could be a change of positions, because they will have to time their passing manoeuvres absolutely to perfection. When you come up behind a slower driver that you're lapping, you can very easily make a mistake and let somebody through. So Watson will have to watch it as he comes up to Eddie Cheever as they go down the long 3/4 of a mile straight. This is 5th gear, over 160 miles an hour. Just think about that. And Watson loses it. That's it. The pressure's got to him. He's kept the car going. Look, he's motoring. Now, if he'd had skirts on his car, he would have been out of the race. It would have damaged them. But immediately, John Watson, who was pressured and lost it, has gone straight down from 5th position to 8th position. What? This is a replay. Now watch it. I'm not surprised with the pressure that Watson had. Now watch the back end of the car swing out. A complete 360-degree turn. Watson keeps it going with the nose pointing in the right direction, and that's a brilliant bit of driving. But in the process, he has gone straight down from 5th to 8th position, which means to say that Marc Surer has gone up to 5th position, Jarier to 6th, Jacques Laffite to 7th place, and we look at number 5, Nelson Piquet, the Brazilian who started on pole position in the Brabham and has actually been into the pits to change his tyres. Now, presumably, and I have to take a guess because I didn't actually see from my box his pit stop. Presumably, Nelson Piquet was taking a gamble in changing tyres that the circuit was going to dry out, in which case he certainly made a wrong guess, but it's not stopping him from passing, first of all, Riccardo Zunino in the Tyrrell, and then Eddie Cheever. No, Cheever he passed first. Number 4 is Zunino, the leader of these two blue unsponsored Tyrrell cars. And Nelson Piquet, let's have a look at it again. He's already passed Cheever. Now he passes number 4, the Argentine driver Riccardo Zunino, who was Piquet's teammate in the Brabham team last year. Piquet then on his way out of the points, and it was Nelson Piquet who finished 2nd in the World Championship last year and who desperately needs points in this race, and he's not in the points positions at the moment because he's well below 6th position, but he desperately needs points because Carlos Reutemann and Alan Jones were respectively 2nd and 1st at Long Beach, the first point scoring race of this year, and they are in, as you see, 1st and 2nd places this year. And it means they're both on 15 points in the World Championship if they keep going in the positions that they're in now. And looking down from the helicopter, you can see how bad the spray is as Carlos Reutemann comes up to take Keke Rosberg, the Finnish driver, in the Fittipaldi car. Now he's going to lap him. And Rosberg was at one stage in this race at 6th position. He's dropped right down. I don't know whether he had a spin or whether he went into the pits to change his tyres. But for whatever reason, with, I would say, yes, look quick, about 84 minutes of this race, which I expect to last, I say, about 2 hours, just over 2 hours gone. Carlos Reutemann is now right up with Keke Rosberg and is going to lap him. Just watch the lines. Rosberg will know, of course, that it's Reutemann. He'll see him in his mirrors. And I would expect Rosberg. And there's Alan Jones in 2nd place, so he's still very close. And Alan Jones has lapped Eddie Cheever as Bruno Giacomelli comes out of the pit, so he must have been in for a 3rd time. Alan Jones then, like Reutemann, is lapping his way through the field as Reutemann comes up, and Rosberg takes a wide line, and I think actually Keke is readying himself to let Carlos Reutemann through. We'll soon see. 63 laps. It hasn't been the most exciting of races at the front because once again it has been an amazing demonstration of the Saudia Leyland Williams team consistency and reliability, and the, I use the word a lot but advisedly so, brilliance of Carlos Reutemann and Alan Jones, the 2nd and 3rd of these two cars here. And my prophecy was wrong because Keke Rosberg does not seem to be making way willingly for Carlos Reutemann. There's Jones. That's Patrick Tambay in the white car with the high wing in the front, number 33, 6th in the race at Long Beach, the first Grand Prix scoring race of 1981. And he's now ahead of one of the Tyrrells as we look down, and you get a magnificent view of this twisty but very flat Rio Autodrome circuit, and the water all around it and the mountains in the background. The circuit about 20 miles away from Brazil, and look at this. This is Marc Surer, the 2nd of these two cars. Marc Surer has now closed right up with Elio De Angelis, who is in 4th position. So Surer, having fought his way up from 6th to 5th when he went past the spinning John Watson, he moved up from 6th position into 5th position. He's now right in the spray of the 4th place man, Elio De Angelis, number 11 in the Lotus 81. De Angelis, 4th place on the left. Sura, 5th place on the right. Sura driving the race of his life, and behind Sura, it's either Jarier with Lafitte following him or Lafitte with Jarier following him. I can't tell at that quick look which of the two Talbots is leading of these two cars, which are the 3rd and 4th of the cars we're looking at the moment. But there is De Angelis in 4th place in the race. There is Sura, number 14, in 5th place in the race. So, Swiss driver in English car, Italian driver in English car. Ahead of them, Riccardo Patrese in the Arrows, 3rd position. Alan Jones in 2nd position. Carlos Reutemann still leading the race. And it looks as though Keke Rosberg has still not been passed by Carlos Reutemann. So Rosberg has got right back in the groove again. Ah, there's confirmation. Lap 45, no change. Those are the positions I've been giving you. Reutemann, Jones, Patrese, 1st, 2nd and 3rd places. Elio De Angelis that we're looking at now in 4th place, followed by Marc Sura in 5th place. And the two Talbots, that must be Jacques Lafitte going through up into 6th position. Yes, it is. That's the... No, it's Jarier. Jarier getting ahead of Jacques Lafitte and taking 6th position from his countryman and teammate, Jacques Lafitte. Meantime, the battle for 4th position continues to rage. The leaders, and we've hardly seen Riccardo Patrese. Somehow or other the cameras have consistently missed him. There's Reutemann leading Keke Rosberg, so he's now got ahead of him, and now Alan Jones is going to have to catch up with and fight his way past the Finnish driver. But knowing Alan, I suspect that he's not going to find it nearly as difficult to get past Rosberg as Reutemann did, because Alan Jones will brook no opposition and he will bundle his way past Keke Rosberg with no ceremony at all, I suspect. Whereas Carlos Reutemann is rather more apt, with his red light shining through the spray, to take it easy getting past someone in comparison with Alan Jones, his teammate. We'll soon see. Reutemann. Look at the spray coming up from Carlos Reutemann's rear wheels. And Rosberg has still not been passed by Alan Jones. All the time, in Grand Prix after Grand Prix, one looks at these Williams cars and thinks, surely they can't both finish again in another Grand Prix, never mind in 1st and 2nd places. Carlos Reutemann has actually broken another motor racing record, because he has finished for the last 11 Grand Prix in World Championship scoring positions. And that is an absolutely amazing testimony, not only to himself as a driver, but to his team mechanics and the car's designer, everybody in the Saudi Leyland Williams team. This is De Angelis, 4th, Sura 5th, and Marc Sura is now starting to pressure De Angelis in exactly the same way as he pressured John Watson. I wonder if the result is going to be the same, because John Watson certainly wasn't touched by Sura's car. There was no question of Sura accidentally nudging the Marlboro car in front of him and John Watson going off because of a push. It was a clean fight. John Watson spun off, and Marc Sura, knowing that his pressurization tactics have worked once, may well be trying it again with De Angelis. And that's Piquet. Piquet coasting. Looks as though his race is run. Coasting, but no, he was just coasting and dropped the clutch to get the engine going again through the rear wheels, and Piquet gets away again. And that's about 95 minutes gone now in this 120-minute or so race, because no Grand Prix can last over 2 hours. The race has to be stopped if it runs for over 2 hours. So 120 minutes is the maximum. That was Reutemann through. Now Jones has got past Rosberg. There is Keke. There is Piquet. So Alan Jones has got ahead of Keke Rosberg in the Fittipaldi and is back in team station with Carlos Reutemann, his teammate. And I would expect to see before very much longer as we look at that's Sura, and Sura's got ahead of De Angelis. Marc Sura has got up into 4th position. Great stuff. We missed it, but he's got past De Angelis, and De Angelis is still on the circuit. So somehow or other, Marc Sura must have got a better line, braked later, accelerated earlier, or whatever. But somehow or other, he has got ahead of Elio De Angelis and is in, as far as my memory can recall, the highest position he has ever been in a Grand Prix. And there he is, number 14, Marc Sura, 4th place. Great drive. Down to 5th goes to De Angelis. In 6th position now, Jean-Pierre Jarier. In 7th place, Jacques Laffite. 1st still Reutemann. 2nd still Jones. 3rd still Patrese. And I was saying I would expect now to see Alan Jones start to close up on as the 2 Talbots, led by Sura there in 4th position, number 14, followed by De Angelis, the right hand of the cars that we're looking at now. There's the 2 Talbots on the left in 6th and 7th positions as Sura accelerates away, and Jarier and Laffite in the Talbots are closing up on De Angelis in the white helmet in the Lotus in 5th place. And Alan Jones must, I would imagine, ahead of them, be closing up on Carlos Reutemann, just to say, in effect, look, my friend, I am less than 10 seconds behind you. Now is your chance to move over and let me, according to the rules of our contract, the requirements of our contracts, move over and let me, Alan Jones, take the lead. That's what I expect to see. But is it going to happen? Well, we'll just have to wait as... Again, De Angelis, Jarier, Laffite go through. And it's Laffite ahead now, somewhere around the circuit. Jacques Laffite has got ahead of his teammate and is up into 6th place. De Angelis. And no words of mine can describe how tough it is for a Grand Prix driver in these circumstances with approaching 500 brake horsepower as Giacomelli goes into the pits for the 4th time in the Alfa Romeo. They have some 500 horsepower underneath their right foot. And Jarier back in 6th position, but that was back on lap 50, and we're ahead of that now because the computer hasn't quite caught up with what we're looking at on the screen. And I'm wondering, as I look at this, how far behind Alan Jones is Riccardo Patrese. If we get a long shot, look behind Alan Jones to see if you can see an orange and white car appear in vision, in which case it will be Riccardo Patrese, the Italian, in his arrows in 3rd position. 500 horsepower. A film of lubricant between the tyres and the circuit, and that lubricant is called water, and it makes it very, very difficult indeed to drive under these circumstances. And we're on about lap 60 now in this 63 lap race, right down in the closing stages of the Brazilian Grand Prix of 1981 on this Rio circuit. There's De Angelis closing up on and taking Zunino as Sura. There's Sura with Nelson Piquet. Nelson Piquet dropping down the field as De Angelis passes Zunino with Jarier right behind him. Jarier passes at the same time. Look for the number on the car behind number 11. If you see it, it should be number 25, Jean-Pierre Jarier, the Frenchman in the Talbot, in 6th position. Not long to go now, and Reutemann and Jones in 1st and 2nd places will both be in the worrying state that you get to in the closing stages of a race. There's Sura, 4th. Piquet, who has been well and truly past, going very slowly as the battle for 5th, led by number 11, Elio De Angelis, approaches and then swings away from us. And Jones and Reutemann imagining probably they're hearing noises in the cockpit that they've never heard before, through their earplugs, over the din. That's Piquet! Piquet spinning! Well, that indicates that Nelson Piquet, when he went into the pits, went on to dry tyres, that's to say slick tyres with no tread on them, and that explains why he's going so slowly. He made the wrong tyre choice when he came into the pits. He's finding it very difficult indeed to control the Brabham, and he must be ruining it because Nelson Piquet is now out of the points and has yet to score in the World Championship. We finished second in 1980, don't forget. And as I said earlier on, Alan Jones and Carlos Reutemann will have 15 points to lead the World Championship very conclusively if they finish very shortly in the positions that they're in now. Because there is no change up front. We're looking at the battle still for 5th position. And it's still Reutemann in the closing stages, leading Jones in 2nd place. Patrese, who we have hardly seen, in 3rd position. In 4th position, the brilliant Marc Surer. People were wondering if Marc Surer was really up to it because he had such terrible luck last season. Well, he's shown that he's well and truly up to it in this race, in 4th position. And still the battle for 5th between, in the white helmet, Elio De Angelis in the Lotus 81, in the blue car behind him in 6th place, Jean-Pierre Jarier battling with Jacques Laffite, who is behind him. And I suspect that Jacques Laffite is going to challenge for 6th place again shortly. There he is, he's coming out of the spray. Jacques Laffite is going to try and take his teammate, and the 6th position and the last World Championship point. 1 point for 6th position. As Reutemann and Jones come through now, and either Reutemann hasn't had a signal from the pits telling him to give way to Alan Jones, or he's decided he's not going to give way to Alan Jones, because Alan is close enough for Reutemann to see him in his mirrors. Alan is certainly making his presence felt. He's much closer now than he was earlier on in the race. And he will know exactly, both of them will know exactly where they are. Look how close Alan Jones is now. There is no doubt at all about the fact that Alan Jones, I think, is saying to Reutemann, I am here, I am here. And Reutemann either hasn't had the official signal, or he's decided that Jones having won at Long Beach and Reutemann having won at South Africa, incidentally, which, because of politics, was declared a non-point scoring race, Reutemann may have decided, I don't want to malign the man, but he may have decided, I am here and here I stay. Because we are almost at the end of the Grand Prix, a race which Carlos Reutemann has driven a copybook race in, because he took the lead right at the beginning by accelerating away ahead of the pole position man Nelson Piquet, by out-dragging his teammate Alan Jones, by taking the lead into the first corner, and he has driven in the lead for the whole 63-lap race distance. Look how close Alan Jones is. That's a lot less than 10 seconds. Almost home. Just watch and see if Patrese appears. No, he's further back, out of vision. Unless something very, very dramatic happens very shortly, Carlos Reutemann is going to win. There are the starting lights into the background, so he must be just about into his last lap now, ahead of Alan Jones. Yes, into the swinging right-hander. Now he goes up the straight out of this right-hander into a swinging left-hand bend at the top of the loop, then into another straight which leads into the left-hander. These corners really unnamed at Rio, unlike most circuits, but it's a left-hand here. Now after this left-hander, he sets himself up for a right. You can see the racing line with Alan Jones still less than 10 seconds behind him. That swinging right appears into a tight left-hander, followed by a tiny little short straight. It's virtually a continuous left-hand bend as Reutemann puts on opposite lock, as does Alan Jones. And they are now into this long 3/4 of a mile straight. Reutemann, Jones, Patrese, Sura, De Angelis. Laffite has gone up to 6th position. That was on the 60th lap, and we're way beyond that now, of course. Piquet keeping going, but you can see how much the Tyrrell of Zunino, who is on wet tyres, has closed up on the Brazilian Nelson Piquet, and there is no way that Zunino, it's Cheever, it's Eddie Cheever in the red helmet, the young American. There is no way that Cheever, good as he is, would have done that if Nelson Piquet had got the right tyres on. And it looks to me as though Cheever's shaping up to pass Piquet, as right in the last stages of the race, Carlos Reutemann still holding his lead over Alan Jones, still Riccardo Patrese third. It's going to be, if they keep going, the 4th successive race that the two Williams have scored maximum World Championship points. The same two drivers finishing in 1st and 2nd places, albeit Jones winning and Reutemann 2nd at Canada, at Watkins Glen and at Long Beach. There is Nelson Piquet, and he's managing to keep ahead of Cheever. No, as I say it, Cheever's going to take him. Cheever goes past, and as I was saying, there is no way that Eddie Cheever would have done that. And Sura, Mark Sura, comes up now in 4th position, about to lap Nelson Piquet. And I would doubt that Sura catches Eddie Cheever, who's coming towards us. Sura going to go through on the inside. There's Reutemann, on almost home now, almost within sight as he comes down the long straight. The spectators, thousands and thousands and thousands of them. And there's the checkered flag. Carlos Reutemann wins the 2nd Grand Prix for him, and Alan Jones finishes 2nd. Reutemann, who won in South Africa, no points, finished 2nd at Riccardo Patrese, finishing in 3rd position. Keke Rosberg coming home. A brilliant achievement for the Williams team. I can't possibly overstate how good it was. 1st and 2nd for the 4th Grand Prix in succession. Mark Sura, a brilliant 3rd behind Patrese, ahead of Elio De Angelis, and Jacques Laffite gets that last World Championship point for his 6th position. As Reutemann, no doubt, tired and wet, but he must be very happy, although I would doubt that he shows it, because he is a man who is very sparing with his smiles, is Carlos Reutemann, but he's got plenty to be very, very happy about after his drive today. Whereas Alan Jones would be a lot less happy, I guess. Carlos Reutemann out of the car. Has he taken 1st place in spite of his contract, or because he didn't receive the signal? Well, we'll know later on. I wouldn't like to be the man to talk to Alan Jones right now. There's Eddie Cheever, who's finished. Carlos Reutemann walking in. Now let's see the helmet come off. And maybe he'll take his balaclava fireproof helmet off as well, and you'll get a look at what the Argentine driver's face looks like. Very wealthy man now, of course, with all his motor racing success behind him. So, Carlos Reutemann, the winner of the Brazilian Grand Prix from Alan Jones, his teammate in 2nd place. Riccardo Patrese, a superb 3rd, and underlining the great form that he showed in the first point-scoring Grand Prix of 1981 at Long Beach. And there they are, and it's significant that Alan Jones is not on the podium. Patrese is shaking the champagne because Reutemann, in deference to his Arab sponsors, does not touch alcohol. And so, a win at Brazil, again for the Williams team and for Carlos Reutemann.